like to ask Victor Harding, if you turn your camera on. Victor is the principal of Harding Security Services. He's going to moderate our last panel this afternoon.
Okay, thanks very much, Neil, for setting aside some time on this issue. I'm going to try to make this session different from the one that you heard about an hour ago, which was really focused more on commercial security today and all the things, cameras and access control, that the average dealer is dealing with. And I'm going to bring us back to just talking about alarm systems, recurring monthly revenue, and what the trials and tribulations are in that whole field. And of course, one important reason why I thought this might be useful is that unfortunately, when it comes time to sell your business, despite all of the new camera work and access control work that there is out there, often buyers are still focused on the value of your recurring monthly revenue. Now, that doesn't have to be strictly monitoring revenue, but it is the recurring monthly revenue that will many times, not always, many times make up the bulk of your value. So I thought it was, important to spend some time just talking about that whole field and just sort of assess sort of what's happening. I picked, with Neil's help, 5 different alarm dealers, all of whom are very experienced in the let's call it the old-fashioned alarm industry. Ivan Spector is based out of Montreal, has headed up every CANASA group you can think, any security group you can think of in both Canada and the United States, has an immense amount of experience in the alarm industry. Sean O'Leary, I've known for 20 years. He's based in Toronto. He has had to maintain a sizable account base in the throes of what's going on in that market today, and on top of that, does several other things in the security field. Michael Bloom is a hardcore security dealer, but as he points out to me quickly, is that often today he is spending much more time on camera jobs, and but he will tell us just what it's like competing against the telcos. And then last but not least, Anas Mustafa is based out in Hamilton, Niagara. And I first met him, and he was a sort of high volume door knocking dealer for Protectron when I was at Protectron more than 13 years ago. I don't know whether his volumes are still as high as they used to be, but he's very much an alarm dealer. So let's just start off with sort of saying, again, I'm trying to stay away from what was discussed earlier. Let's just talk about the size of people's alarm account. But Kevin, God, I forgot Kevin. Kevin, I'm sorry. Kevin is a senior officer at Huronia Fire and Security. He's based in Midland, and his boss, I guess, Rob Thorburn, is based in Collingwood. They are the player in that particular market, not just in security alarm, but also fire. And Kevin will tell you quickly, he does a lot of camera systems. So let's just open up with talking about, the alarm account market and what's going on in that market. Is it easier or more difficult? Are we growing our account base or not? Ivan, why don't you start us off?
Well, I'm not quite sure exactly what the question is, Victor. You want to know about M&A activity, or you're
No.
curious
I want to
about
know about organic growth. Organic growth, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we tend to like regulated areas of the business for a lot of reasons, because it's somewhat immune from some of the pressures that you're seeing from some of the low-cost entrants into the industry now. So by focusing on regulated parts of the industry, it's a lot more insulated and somewhat more protected. Organically, if you're not keeping close to your customer base, you're not communicating with them on a regular basis, you're going to have a problem. Patrick Sue made a lot of comments about customer contact points and customer touch points. More and more important to cut through the clutter of all the information that they're being flooded with. If you're not upgrading your accounts and keeping close to your client base and listening to the voice of the customer, you're going to have a lot of problems. There's a lot of competition for those clients, particularly residential, and you just have to stay focused. We don't typically do low cost or no cost. We do our residential client base is typically custom design nature, so kind of helps out a lot.
Ivan, have you been growing your account base over the last 2 years?
Yes.
Really? That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Well, granted, Victor, the residential client base was a little bit more challenging to get through to, especially during the first year of COVID. Commercial stayed quite robust, and now we're just seeing the residential actually playing a little bit of catch up.
Right. And just attached to that, your comments about this part of it, a greater and greater percentage of interactive or alarm.com going on to your accounts or not? If
you're not specifying interactivity, and if you're not specifying the use of an app, your client base is going to get stale very, very quickly. This is what customers want. They want to interact with their systems via an app. Again, Patrick touched on this. They want one app to rule all of these devices as much as they can. It's an easier user experience for most customers instead of having to search around for different apps on their phones. One of the interesting things we've seen is that we're selling or specifying much fewer touchpads on top floors or in master bedrooms because people are simply using their phones.
Right. Sean, tell us about being an old-fashioned alarm dealer. Of course, you're probably not doing that anymore, but.
Well, if the question is, are we growing organically? I would say past challenges, especially with COVID the last couple of years, it's been very tricky. I mean, with essentially the COVID lockdowns and travel restrictions, people working from home, the demand for alarms has been reduced. So along with that, we've seen a higher attrition rate, especially on our residential client base. I suspect, and we're already starting to see a lot of that come back now, but yeah, as far as the last couple of years, it's been a challenge.
Right.
So where I find that we're making a difference and how we do best at trying to retain our existing clients is just spending more time and energy on account setup. And, you know, the universe is, I can say the landscape has changed quite a bit because we are doing more interactive services, more home automation. We're doing more wireless alarms, and there becomes more, I'm going to say, attention to detail required with that type of setup. I mean, people have apps. They want to know that well, let's just talk about that. They have better visibility. So people now can manage their alarm accounts better. They can see a zone description. They receive notifications on their app. And that has to be set up properly. And it has to also align with our programming in the alarm panel. It has to align with our definitions at the central station and account setup at our station. And if it's not in alignment, then the client is going to receive different notifications than what our central operators are getting. And then they're going to get called and they're going to get different information. And that could be a problem for us. So I think dealers today really have to be careful to make sure that everything's in sync, both the alarm programming, the account information in SIMS, and also the information that's in the alarm app that the client is using.
Sean, would you be doing a higher percentage of new commercial accounts today than residential?
in terms of quantity, no, like we do both. So we install both commercial, industrial, and residential accounts, and we're actively involved in all areas.
Right.
Certainly on, and we might even get into this later, but on the residential side, we're up against the telcos, which certainly presents itself as a unique and real problem for all dealers. I mean, they've got deep pockets. They've already got relationships with these clients. I mean, they're putting in $1,500 worth of equipment for free. So are we going to go down that road and match that? I think it's a bit of a race to the bottom, a bit of a fool's game, trying to match them at what they're good at, and we don't have their money. I think it makes more sense for us to engage the client, be a strategic partner with our clients, provide them with better response, more accurate and timely information. And I think that's how we make the difference. And I think that's how we combat the the assault that we're seeing from the telcos.
Annis, you're a big alarm.com user. You probably 9 out of 10 systems you put in probably have got interactivity in it. Wouldn't that be right?
Yeah, it's probably about 99%, almost
Right.
everything. Yeah.
Right. Right. And you're still growing your account base?
Yes, we are.
And
Yeah.
and you're running this off of referrals, call centers. How are you managing to continue to do that?
Well, we went independent a few years ago. We were a dealer for ADT and previously Protectron. But after going independent, yeah, we do get a lot more referrals. When you're using your own yard signs, you're using your own stickers. The alarm.com app's branded with us. So you're getting a lot of referrals. In today's world, the internet's huge, obviously, for marketing. It's costly, but you have to spend money on SEO. You have to spend money on advertising. And, in the past, we used to also do door to door. We haven't done that throughout COVID. No plans on doing that anytime soon. We'll see how that goes. But really, yeah, it's referrals, advertising, shows, trade shows, that kind of stuff.
Right, right. Michael, you and I have talked about how difficult it is to compete with the telcos. Give us, and also feel free to tell the audience sort of about your average day these days. And, what I heard was, how far, you're really spending more time doing camera systems than you are doing alarm systems. Isn't that right?
100% correct. This industry has changed. Many years ago when I started in this business, we would hardwire an alarm system, put it in, and it would up and run and charge the customer their monthly fees, and not see the customer for another 5 years until their battery had to change, maybe even longer. Nowadays, it's a completely different business. Not the same way. Obviously, technology's changed a little bit. I think there's a lot more to come this way. And the telco companies have certainly gone into this business in a big way. And they're very competitive in that respect. So what they're able to do that smaller alarm or bigger alarm companies can't do is they can bundle their services because a telco company provides the internet, phone, home phone, cell phone, cable, TV or TV of some sort, and now alarm systems. So it's one big bill. Some of the situations that we're running into is that telco companies, by the time they bundle and offer the discount to the customer, the alarm system goes in for free, and the monthly is basically almost for free too, or even a negative amount because of this bundling. So it makes it very competitive. So our business has migrated slightly from being an alarm company, what I would call us, we're still an alarm company, we still do the installs and service, but certainly not to the same degree, and certainly not to the same degree in the residential side. We're now migrated to being almost a camera company. We spend most of our time installing camera video systems, and that's actually through COVID. We've been busier than ever installing cameras because a lot of businesses were shut down during COVID, and that gave them the opportunity for us to go in and run wire and cabling and install cameras. So we've kind of migrated the company from an alarm company to a camera company.
Right.
And it's been very profitable for us, but there's no, unfortunately with cameras, it's like the one off and there's no recurring revenue for it. It's just, you install it, you get paid for it, and you walk away from it.
Kevin, you've managed, along with your partners there at Huronia, to establish yourself as the major player in 2 or 3 markets up and north of Toronto. So, perhaps, I mean, I don't know, do you see the telcos up there? What are the issues for you surrounding growing your account base, your monitored account base?
Well, we are definitely seeing the growth in all the telco businesses as they are. What we're finding is a lot of people are getting away from the traditional landline telephone, so they're moving to a integrated system with their provider, whoever the telco they're providing with. They're getting an integrated service. So in that scenario, they're quite often having to upgrade their alarm system or change to something that doesn't use the phone line, that uses cellular or internet or something like that. So we're starting to see them pick up a few of those clients because they're going in there and like other ones have said, they're bundling those services. But we've seen it as an opportunity where we may not be growing as fast as we used to with number of accounts. But what we're finding is for each account with the integrated services, cellular add-on, we're getting more money per account. So, we're growing in a different way. We're growing off of each customer instead of number of customers. We're getting more per customer. So the ones that we're getting and keeping are much more value to us versus the ones that we're losing.
Right. So when you go to sell a monitored account base, Ivan, you know this, depending upon who the buyer is, you typically will take your gross recurring monthly revenue and you'll deduct 2 or 3 items, depending upon how you categorize them. One will be the cost of cell fixed line cell costs, and connected in that is alarm.com. So what I'm getting at is Kevin's 100% right. The overall RMR is higher, and that's a good thing, but the actual margins that you make on the extra charges to the customer for cell or the extra charges for alarm.com are not as great, and the margin's significantly lower. So, would you agree with me that can have, dealers have just got to be aware of that, right?
Yeah, it's a good point that you bring up, Victor. And we've talked about this before, that the alarm.coms of the world and cloud type services and software as a service have all done a great job of putting their hands basically into the alarm dealers' pockets. But I just wanted to say something. This is 2022, and I remember back in the late 80s and the early 90s, the biggest fear of the industry was, if you recall, the RBOCs, the regional Bell operating companies, and this was more south of the border than it is here. And of course, obviously, some of the providers in Canada have gotten a taste of the alarm business, and they really like what they see. But to the point of the Bell operating companies or the telephone providing companies, they've gotten a lot better than they used to be. And granted, we get calls on a fairly regular basis from their customers because they have nobody to talk to. And that seems to be a common problem. And I'm sure we all field those calls in our businesses, that people are calling up, and really there's very limited that we can do for them because they're locked into a contract. They don't own the equipment. I mean, they got what they paid for, unfortunately. And this is I don't think is very good for anybody in the alarm business. And really it's going to be, the tail is going to be how you differentiate yourself from everybody else. And that's going to be, I think, a more key component. Michael brings up a really good point about he's doing well in the business, but he's not growing his RMR business, which really is that's the golden goose of the alarm business, is recurring revenue.
Right. And, I think probably, I don't know, most of the panelists here will know, but I mean, I see this when I'm doing a deal. What's astonishing to me, if I go back to just even 10 years ago when I first opened my business, you took your gross RMR and you deducted the fixed line costs. And back then, a really good advanced account base might have 10 or 15% of the accounts on cell and very few accounts on interactive. Today, you'll see account bases that they might have 50% of their accounts are on cell or interactive. So my point being is that it pays for alarm dealers to pay attention to those cell charges, those monthly cell charges, and the interactive, because it's a huge deduction from your RMR when it comes time to sell. That's
Sure, but you just have to find the right unwary buyer.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So
but Victor, as you know, we're seeing more and more deals now that there's a much higher scrutiny on EBITDA than there is strictly on recurring revenue, and
Right.
and that's figuring much more importantly in a large number of deals.
right. And that's partly because I think, Ivan, partly because of the fact that so many alarm dealers today are spending so much time on all of these non-RMR exercises, putting in cameras, putting in access control, that kind of stuff. So
Look, guys, but we all heard from Dean, who makes a very, very compelling discussion regarding cloud-based services, and cloud-based services is another form of recurring revenue. You may not be getting all of it, but at the end of the day, I guess half a loaf is better than none.
right. So
on that,
go ahead, Anis.
well, on that note, I would still say though, like for us, if we were going to buy some accounts, I'd rather pay a higher multiple on an interactive account than have a landline account with higher margins. It's a stickier customer, it's a better customer, and you don't have to change out that system anytime soon because they already have the newest technology.
Right, and you're doing the same thing like the telcos are doing, is you're getting the customer customer entanglement, bundling, call it what you want, but they're more dependent on the system that we're installing. When you're putting in cameras and you're layering thermostats and audio video doorbells, they're very dependent on that system.
The interactive and cell systems, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Anis and Ivan, but they do come with some issues. When we were preparing for this session live in a practice run, a couple of you were talking about the ins and outs of the fact that when you put an interactive system in or a cell system, that there is a greater chance for technological failure. I'd be interested to hear, when I say failure, I don't mean it completely breaks down, but I mean you're managing more than you were managing when you just had a landline system. Would people agree with me on that?
Yeah, absolutely. The more equipment that we install, whether it's a home or business, the more items that we have to manage. So it's not just an alarm system. It's now, front door video intercom, it's camera systems. It may be even, if we're ending up putting in door unlock systems, the more equipment that we install, the more things that we have to service and support both in the office and also with greater truck rolls. But back to this issue of recurring revenue, which obviously is near to dear to all of our hearts, maybe what we have to focus on and where the future is going is RMR on the video surveillance side. We own and operate a ULC listed central station. We're getting more and more clients and dealers coming to us asking us to monitor the cameras that they're installing. And with what I see to be better video analytics going forward, it's getting easier for our operators to reduce the number of events. So we're not seeing a lot of false alarm events. So the systems are quite stable. So now we can really do a good job of monitoring and cost effectively our protected clients. And so maybe that's the opportunity. We're going to see this integration between alarms and cameras and access, and we just bundle it all together and charge an RMR. And that becomes the new model for our business.
Now, is that video monitoring that you're talking about, Sean, is it what I would call video verification, where they, you know, just want you to clock in when there's an event? Or is it, you know, ongoing, steady, you know, 9 hours or 8 hours a shift of overnight monitoring?
Well, it can be all of the above. So clearly you can have live video monitoring where you have people that are just literally staring at the cameras and waiting for an event to occur, but that's going to be super expensive. And there's going to be, I believe, a very limited market for that type of service because I think it's just too costly. So event-based monitoring is what I'm talking about. And that's really where I think, especially where the analytics come in, the video analytics and the AI and the machine learning, it'll reduce the number of events that operators have to respond to, and clients will also get notifications. But let's go back to the alarm. I mean, you've got do-it-yourself alarms out there, and that's not our target market. And I guess you could have do-it-yourself people that have cameras getting video notifications, but you know, if they go to a restaurant and they shut off their phone, or if they travel, or when they're sleeping, are they paying attention to these notices? And I think that's where the opportunity is for us, because we're professionals providing 24/7 central station monitoring, so we can monitor the cameras, monitor these notifications, and respond accordingly when these events occur.
I'm just curious of the other group, how many of you, Kevin, Michael, are doing any event-based video monitoring?
If I can interject right now, we're not doing any, but to kind of elaborate on what Sean had said is that since we've installed so many camera systems, we're now finding that, you know, if something happened or there's a situation or there's been something that needs to have the video recaptured and sent to the police or whatever the case, we're finding that our workload internally has gone through the roof because we've installed these camera systems, a one-off thing. We're not charging them any RMR, which we probably should be now. And they're coming to us saying, the police need this video, or I need this video. And so, you know, the camera systems don't quite have the level of analytics that they're going to have at some point. So we're spending hours of time combing through video in our office and trying to capture the video and send it off to the customer so that they have it captured. Instead of the customer doing all this, they just want to call us and have it done. You know, unfortunately, right now we're not charging the customer for that. We're doing it as a courtesy because if it's a customer, it's also an alarm customer typically, and we might provide other services. So we want to keep the customer happy and not send them off saying, oh, you know, this alarm company is going to charge me for this or not do this, and I paid them all this to put it in. So we're trying to, you know, keep the customers as one big happy family. We try to build a relationship with every customer to keep them as a customer, not have them go off to competitors. And that helps us out quite a bit because through word of mouth, we get more business and more cameras, and it just keeps growing and growing. But the analytics needs to come around with cameras so that this can be a much smoother operation for all of us.
Kevin, what about you in event monitoring?
Well, Victor, I just want to go back to that one when you're talking about, you know, phone line based systems. I think in regards to complexity, I agree that moving to cellular IP based systems uses more technology, but I think we all have to realize that the phone systems that we have now are not the same phone systems we had when alarm systems first came out in the 80s, 90s using dialers. Like we have more problems troubleshooting issues with phone lines because they're not true phone lines anymore. So I think as an industry, we have to realize that that is not the way we're going to monitor alarm systems any longer, is over the phone line. So I think that's something we all have to come to realize, is that our industry has changed. And I think you're going to see a lot of companies just like ours that are just saying, we're not going to monitor over phone line anymore. It's going to be cell-based or IP-based, and I see Ivan shaking his head, and I know there's companies in the States that moved that way quite a while ago. So I think that's the way our industry is going. Same as direct wire died many years ago, right, Ivan? It died a long time ago, and DVAC
Absolutely.
is going. So I think that's the way we got to go. Going back to the video, event-based video is the only way to do it. We've tried monitoring locations, and you're not gonna catch anything. It's too expensive. And even event-based monitoring, the challenge with that is, you know, you get an image to your screen. All you can really do is tell the police or tell the customer, hey, we see somebody there. But the first thing they're going to say, well, who is it? Well, we don't know who's supposed to be at your property. We have no idea if that person's the mother-in-law who just forgot their key and tripped the alarm accidentally. So video monitoring has been, everyone's talked about it, but it's really Even the analytics, it can tell if it's a person or a vehicle, and that's something you can pass on to the police. But if it's somebody who's tripped it accidentally, we don't know if that person has authorized, until we get to the point where video recognition can recognize that, hey, that is an authorized user at that property. It's still it's not an exact science. All we can do is tell somebody that there's somebody there, but we can't identify them.
What about sending the clip, or what about getting that clip to the customer? Because they would be able to tell you.
They could, but you have to understand, in the dispatch process, that slows down the whole process. So now you're dispatching an image to the customer, hoping that they're going to look at it and get back to you. So quite often what will happen is a lot of the integrated systems, the video already goes to the client themselves, and they can maybe able to make that call. But as far as in the monitoring station itself, video monitoring is not what I think we all thought it would be. We all talked about it many years ago, but I don't think it's, it's good for telling us there's somebody on site and dispatching the police to it, but it's not going to resolve a lot of the issues regarding false alarms when somebody just trips it by accident.
Ivan, what do you think?
It's a very, I think, thank you, Victor. It's a very good discussion. There are some people, particularly Rob Baxter, Rob out of Vancouver,
do.
he
Yeah.
he specializes in video monitoring. He's absolutely in love with it. I think what we find is, and by the way, Sean and Kevin, you're both bang on that it's got to be event-based. There's no other way to do it. Well, there is, you could charge customers an inordinate amount of money to have someone looking at the screen, but the problem that you're going to run into is one operator can only do a limited number of sites, and it becomes very, very top heavy in terms of labor. So it's all about managing client expectations. If you're going to promise them, if you're going to promise a customer, the earth, moon, and the stars, you're going to end up paying for that. You've got to be realistic. You've got to be honest. You've got to be forthright. There are a lot of variables that can affect video monitoring. There's weather. You can have bandwidth problems. You can have all types of issues which can affect it, and which can be a deterrent to having successful implementation. And you don't want that.
So let's just switch gears for a second. I'll start off with you, Anis. I mean, what is the biggest problem that you have today in running your business?
Honestly, I would probably just say it's dealing with the telcos and the offers that they're putting out there, right? So we're just trying to manage that as best we can and still win over as many customers as we can without focusing strictly on the price. It's been challenging, but we've been successful with it, and that's probably one of the major problems. And then the other thing is throughout COVID, right? The uncertainty of for example, during COVID we had hundreds and hundreds of accounts on hold waiting to be installed because they were scared of having someone in their house. There was supply chain issues throughout the last couple of years where you can't get a hold of certain products. So with that, with those solutions, we were looking at let's order a lot of extra equipment. Let's hold 3-4 times more equipment than we normally would, just in case we can't get a hold of this item the next time we need it. So those would probably be the major issues that we've been running into over the last couple of years. But thankfully we've been managing it very well, and we've still been able to grow our account base and grow our sales numbers.
Sean, what's your biggest issue? And I know you're in a bunch of different fields, and we're not, and I know you've got your own monitoring station, but what's the biggest headache today, ongoing, or threat? Let's put it that way.
Well, I've already mentioned the threat of the telcos, so that is very real. I mean, they're in a position, really, they have both a competitive and comparative advantage. I mean, they are they're our clients and are their clients. And if our client moves, they often get notified before we do. So they can then go ahead and bundle the services before we even know the client's moved. So then I lose that client without even getting up to bat. So it's a real threat. And I think it's our biggest threat. Certainly, dealers can look at diversifying away from the residential market. But I really think the way to compete is not on price. I think it's about just deliverables, making sure that we're spending more time with every account as it goes in, making sure it's accurate, more touch points with the clients, making sure that they know that we're there, we're paying attention, and that we're not just selling them a product. Like, we're a strategic partner, and that we care. So I think that's our differentiation. I mean, small is beautiful. There's a book written by Max Neef talking about the advantage that small businesses have over large, and it's really that. It's touch points. It's being able to manage that client a little better, engage that client, and make them feel that they're important.
Michael, what's
Yeah.
your biggest hassle today? Probably the same thing, I bet.
It's the same thing, but I'm not going to mention telco companies again. I'm going to go on two different topics. I'm going to say customer demands have increased, and communication to customers has increased by tenfold over the last little while. So customers are contacting us, and they expect things, fast turnaround, things to happen quick, and that's been the major problem. But the other issue is that with these apps and phone apps and email notifications of alarm and events and low batteries and all the things that happen, customers are finding out about these events almost immediately, within seconds of it happening. And one of our biggest problem is, unfortunately, the monitoring station. And we use more than one, but one is our primary. And we're finding we're getting a lot of huge complaints from customers because they get the notification of something that's happened within seconds of it happening. And the monitoring station is calling them anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours later or longer to tell them about this event when they already know about it. So they're getting fairly upset with the monitoring services, and we use a third party. It's just, there isn't a smooth transition, and it's causing us to lose customers. It's causing huge complaints. I can't tell, I can go on and on about that, but it's a big problem for us.
Ivan, what's your biggest headache or worry or threat as you look at the business, at your business?
Well, it's actually a point that you're probably going to want to talk about later on, but I think the biggest issue is personnel. It's finding people, training people, retaining people, and also paying people. That's a huge challenge these days. And I know it was discussed before, is getting people interested in our industry and getting people to, I guess, get passionate and fall in love with it the same way that we have. Because it's a very compelling industry with a great story. It's not everybody that can get up every morning and say, you know what, today or yesterday we saved someone's life, and it's a great reason to be in this business.
And in the last session, Ivan, we heard Doug Pension talk about trying to find experienced, sophisticated techs. Well, I talked to the general manager of a monitoring station, and he was telling me about the backlog of new accounts that he's trying to put into a station, and he can't find entry-level people to man his station. And it's related to COVID. It's related to what the government's handing out to people these days, and it's related to it's probably related to a bunch of things. But this skill shortage issue in Canada, the United States, and probably all over the world. I mean, I was reading the paper this morning and talking about I think there's 9 million open jobs in the United States of America, whatever an open job means. I mean, it doesn't matter what the definition is. There's like 850,000 open jobs in Canada today, but people just don't want to take them up. So it's
first of all, I think you're talking about the same monitoring station perhaps that Michael Bloom is using to monitor his accounts. But at the end of the day, we have a crisis not only in this country but worldwide, which is getting people to work, and attracting and retaining. Look, don't forget, you hire somebody, let's say, to do some data entry level into your monitoring facility, right? It takes time to train them how to do it right, because one mix up on that, one number that's misplaced or inverted or was not correct, creates immediate problems with, in terms of what the customer is expecting from you. So, there's a personnel issue, and there's certainly that we're seeing, or at least I'm seeing now in certain instances, are supply chain issues. And just if you're not putting in your quotations and specifications that prices and availability may be affected by supply chain issues, you better start doing that, because we started doing that probably a couple of months ago. Every single quotation that we're putting out these days that goes to a customer states that exactly that. Prices and availability of equipment due to supply chain issues may affect your system.
Kevin, lastly, what's the biggest thing you worry about or threat to your business?
It's labor shortages. You know,
Yeah.
we own our own monitoring station as well, and it was hard to find operators before COVID started. So, you know, it's still a challenge. And now it's even more of a challenge to find skilled people. I sit on the national board of CANASA, and I sit on 2 other subcommittees of that. And one of the main things that we're talking about is how do we make this industry much more attractive? You know, through the education committee, Ron's heading up a group there. Ron Jagman's heading up a group there that our main focus is getting the colleges to get people trained in what we do, because not everyone understands, not a lot of people know this industry is there. So we have to let people know that it's there, that it's exciting, and get more people trained because that's our biggest challenge right now is finding people. You know, I don't think it's the telcos. The telcos are always going to be there. They're always going to have a place. It's finding people that can get this work done. Like, we have not seen a slowdown since COVID started. You know, we've had a backlog the whole time, and a lot of it's due to not having enough people. And I think we're going to have to look at different ways of doing things. You know, what Michael was talking about, where the equipment is sending out the responses quicker than the monitoring station can. Well, you know, we're going to have to look at different ways. I know in the States, a lot of them are using two-way texting for getting that information out, because that's the most efficient way. The automation software can do it. So we just have to figure out how do we manage that so that the customer still sees value in having a monitored system, because a lot of this equipment will do it automatically. You can buy a $50 camera off of Amazon, and it'll notify you every time it sees something. So how do we differentiate what we do versus what somebody can pick up off the shelf? And it's I think what Sean was saying, it's a touch point. It's a customer service. Some people are going to go that marketplace, and some people are going to want the custom services that we provide.
Yeah, you know, at the end of the day, we're in the professional monitoring business. This is not getting only a signal to a cell phone. We respond. We alert the authorities, we alert contact lists. You're not going to get that out of the DIY system. And as these tech savvy people get older, they're going to be aware that their time is worth more than their money. They're going to go to professional systems and professionally installed systems. You know, there are some companies that are doing what they call do it together. We looked at that model. We don't think it's particularly in line with what we want out of our client base, and I just don't think it's a workable solution for us. You know, what we do is, you know, at the end of the day, guys, we save lives, and there's no higher mandate, and there's no higher reason for us doing what we do than that simple goal.
Okay, thanks. I'm getting warning from Neil that we should wrap up shortly. I'm going down to the Q&A and just picking up on one comment from Jennifer Holloway, who's actually probably in the States now, if I know, and who I've known. She raises a good question that, you know, in these days where the price of everything is going up, I am always amazed, and of course, I don't have to manage the account base like you guys do, that alarm dealers don't raise their rates more than they do. I mean, I just very seldom.
That's because we can't. I mean,
well,
Victor, there's a lot of competition out there, Victor.
I understand that. I get that. But, you know, everybody else, you know, is raising rates, and I mean, it's astonishing. I can't remember the last time that I went in and talked to an alarm dealer about his business, if I was either valuing it or selling it. And I don't even ask the question anymore. When was the last time you raised your rates? Christ, it was like, you know, before
well,
you were in
I can
business.
tell you that we've been at this for almost 28 years, and I was actually charging more in 1995 than I am today for alarm system monitoring. So alarm monitoring hasn't gone anywhere. I mean, yes, we've increased rates when a cell comes into the equation. But even back in those days, 20 years ago, I was doing open and closes. I was charging an extra $10 a month for open and closes. Now we offer that for free. It's bundled in with the interactive service. So if I charge $10 now, I got to pay for the interactive services. I got to pay the cell fee, and I'm still getting the same amount of money. And thank God I own my own central station. Otherwise, the station would charge me an extra fee for that as well.
Well, I'm looking at.
I'm sorry.
Hang on just for a second.
Okay.
I'm looking at the
Yep.
smiles on Michael and Annis's face, and I regret to say that they agree with you, Sean.
I actually don't agree with Sean. And
Okay.
as Victor alluded to earlier, I was very involved with the Monitoring Association in the U.S. And I have a lot of outreach into some of the U.S. companies. And a third generation alarm company, I had exactly this discussion with them. There's competition, and you're going to blow yourself out of the market. They've raised their rates every year. And he looked at me when I said, I can't do that. He looked at me like I had a third eye in the middle of my forehead. He said, yes, you can. You may lose a couple of customers, but at the end of the day, if you're losing your customers over a 2 or 3 or 4% increase, then you've got the wrong clients. And this is probably a 5-year or 6 or 7-year conversation. And to Jennifer's point, we started raising our clients, and we're not pigs about it, maybe 2 or 3% a year, but we do an increase every year. Every year. Our costs go up.
I remember it was and I realized that every situation is different and times are different. But I learned some stuff when I was working at Voxcom, and Fred Fong and Brad sat down and said, well, that they needed to raise their rates. Of course, they were owned by a private equity firm, and private equity firms are all about money. Well, they just literally looked at their, I don't know, might have been 80,000 customers at that time. I hope I don't get a call from Brad on this. And they said, well, anybody that's below $25 a month is going to $26.95 or whatever it happened to be. And literally they took, I don't know, 10,000, 15,000 accounts, and boom. And they were so further ahead at the end of it that it had a huge impact on me. So, I mean, I don't know what that translates into. And I realized with the telcos, they weren't fighting the telcos in those days. And so it's a different game,
I wanted to say on that note, I think raising rates on existing customers, if they're happy with you, I don't think it's a huge problem. I think it can be done. I just think when you're competing for a new client right now with the offers out on the market, you can't have that higher rate.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. And if you're locking customers into a 3 or 5 year, you're obligated to keep the prices at that, for the duration of the contract, unless you have an escalation clause built into the contract, which you probably should. You should probably put in a COLA clause, cost of living adjustment, for every year that you have that account.
But there was another interesting thing, and this will be the last comment I'll make about rates that I learned at Voxcom too, which is that, the rates, a lot of you may not realize this, but the rates in different parts of the country are dramatically different. So for example, BC and Alberta had no problem getting to $25 a month, $30 a month, $35 a month. Okay, no problem. Quebec, if you got to $20 a month, you were gouging. I mean, generally speaking, I'm not saying everybody, Ivan, but Maritimes,
I know.
$16.66 a month. And yet some of the national companies were charging $25 a month in the Maritimes, when all the maritime dealers were telling us, oh, well, we can't charge more than $16 a month. So all I'm saying is that there are ways of doing it. I'm not advocating it, but there are ways of doing it, and making it stick. So, guys, I have a feeling that Neil will want me to wind this up. So let me just say thanks very much to my 5 panelists for joining us. I hope the audience has benefited from the session. Back to you, Neil.
Thanks, Victor.
Thanks.
Thanks, Victor.
Great.
Thank you.
Victor. Thanks, Victor, for moderating, and thanks to all the panelists for joining us for an insightful session.